Praise the Lord. Welcome to another episode on GFN on the mic. Today we are here with Sister Hepzy, and she's a member of our Oxford Prayer Centre, and she specializes in mental health, and she goes on with psychology and everything. And what would you like to talk about today?
Well, I would like to talk about the suffering of Jesus Christ. So before I start with my talking, I'd like to ask you a question.
Of course.
What is your idea about the suffering of Jesus Christ? How do you think Jesus suffered on this earth?
As everyone or an average person would think about Jesus suffering on the cross, would be basically how he was nailed on the cross, how he was humiliated by the people, how his disciples were not there to help, how he was nailed on the cross, how he was beaten up. And I think it would be the fact that he was tortured so much. He was tortured physically so much. He went through all of that for a person, for the sins of the world to be cleansed away. I think that would be what an average person or me as a person would think.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, actually. Yeah, I mean, my answer is also the same, but my focus is more on how much Jesus suffered. When it comes to suffering, it is not just the physical aspect. So when you think about a person's body, physiology, it is more about just not his physical body, it's also his mental health, I would say. So when you're talking about Jesus, he suffered for the mankind, both physically and mentally, emotionally, in different realms, actually. So I would like to elaborate on that one. So just for that, I would like to read a verse which I really want to speak about. If you can read it for me, Isaiah 53 from 1 to 5?
1 to 5.
Or 6, please.
1 to 6.
Yes, please.
Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all.
Yeah. So the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all, means he chose. So when he saw into mankind, so man had sinned, yeah. Man sinned, why did Jesus actually die? So we think about Jesus' death, why did he die? We say that, so just giving a brief about, his death. Why am I talking about this? Why he died was, I heard one of the pastors say one illustration. It's just a illustration. He had a few ants in his garden.
Yeah.
So it was quite annoying for him. He thought, he wanted to fumigate and just, so that the place is clean from them. Then he thought, how about it would be very unkind if I did that. How about I become one of them? Tell them to get away from this place.
Yeah.
And then maybe they would listen, and then
they
would go away. So he becomes, it's an illustration again.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes one of them.
Yeah.
He tells them, you know what, this place is going to be annihilated. How about we all move from this place to somewhere more safer? Mm. All these other ants make fun of him. They're like, how can you be so stupid? This is the best place ever. Look at all the food. Look at all the riches around here. How can you even be so stupid to even think, that going somewhere else is the best thing? This is exactly how. And then what do? They mock him, and obviously they would harm him.
Yeah.
Same way, Jesus, he came to mankind because he loved us. Now, if man, on the whole, they sinned, now someone had to pay the price. When God the Father had seen down from heaven, he sees that there's nobody, not one person he could choose to die for the whole world. Earlier, in the Old Testament, they had to sacrifice a lamb for the sins. Now that was a big process altogether, looking after the sheep, taking it there. And all of this, it was a big process. So God wanted to send somebody, wanted to choose somebody who could actually pay the price for this, He didn't find anybody. The best person that he found was his son. And that is what Isaiah is prophesying even before Jesus is coming. Now, when Jesus came on this earth, okay, as you know, in the Bible, not from the time he was a baby, but as he went further, he started teaching in the temple. So, which means he was very wise. He was very understanding. He knew a lot of things as he was growing. But his ministry started at the age of 30. There are 3 years of his ministry. We can see in many cases where, Jesus goes aside and he prays alone. He has a conversation with his father, like hours of conversation. I'm wondering what those conversations might have been actually. It really is quite, surprising that he can have this hours of conversation. He's just isolating himself. So we can see one such conversation that he had was at Gethsamane. Yeah.
Before he was arrested.
That conversation was we can see how much he actually suffered. Even before the Gethsemane, he knew that he was going to die. He is told in many instances that 3 days later, so what is going to happen is they're going to take him, and 3 days later he would die, and they would crucify him, and 3 days later he's going to rise up again. He's told it in many instances to his disciples, to the world. He's told them. Now, not many have understood that. So when he also spoke about, rebuilding the church, he didn't talk about breaking the literal church or literal temple, but he was talking about his body. Now, when he came, we can see very crucially, especially now, and I don't want to deviate away from the topic, what my focus is, how much mental suffering that Jesus had. So when we see here, he was inflicted, right? So with, we can see, by his bruises, his wounds, he was wounded for our transgressions. Yeah? For our transgressions, he was bruised. And his stripes, because of his stripes, we are healed. Because it said that because of how much he suffered, we are healed. So the amount of suffering that he had is equal to the amount of healing that we have. So it is very important to understand, was it only physically healing that he meant here? No, it was also our mental healing. So when we talk about mental healing, I would like to just focus on how much, mentally Jesus suffered with the burden of crucifixion. Crucifixion in olden days was like, it's for someone who's who's cursed. Jesus, in his 3 years ministry, what did he actually do was he went about spreading the love. He went about spreading love. He rose Jairus' daughter. He rose people from the dead. He healed the people, the lame, the blind. So many people. He fed the 5,000. He fed the 3,000. He turned water into wine. Everybody saw the miracle. Now, Jesus is going to die. Do you know something? He actually was alone.
Till then, he had all the people. But
all the people were everywhere. Wherever he went, literally some places, Jesus had to literally hide himself.
He was that popular among all the people in those times.
He was so popular. Where were all the people? Where did all the people who were literally gathering, where did they go? So if you see his, the Passover feast, the last one where he calls his 12 disciples and he breaks the bread. He tells, this is in remembrance of me. He's showing that example. But while he did that was his, when a person who's in prison, okay, when he knows that he's going to be hanged tomorrow, do you think, even the tiniest portion of bread he would be able to swallow? No matter how tasty that is, it would be the most difficult part to eat. Yeah. So this is Jesus. When he was there, he was like, he's giving the bread to his disciples. But that was when, his time is nearing. That was his last meal, and that was the most difficult meal in his entire life. And that is when he literally pointed out, one of you are going to betray me. And Peter actually, in Peter goes on boasting, in many instances, he tells, I'm not going to leave you. You know what? Bro, I'm just going to stay with you no matter what. We have a lot of friends like that who would be like, oh, I'm going to stay with you. No matter what, I'm going to be with you. So, but Jesus is like, go away from me, Satan. His vision, he didn't want anything to take him away from the will of God. That he know Jesus know the purpose why he came here was, the cross.
Yeah.
Not to heal people. Though that was part of his ministry, his main focus was redeeming mankind from sin. That redemption had so much intensity, so much depth. So he's like, go away from me, Satan. No distractions from my vision to please my Father in heaven. Now I have to pay the price so that I will be a link. So man and God, they can be closer to each other again. So if you see in the Old Testaments, God keeps warning people. He tries to bring people closer to him, but they just keep going away from him. Now this price, though, they keep shedding a lamb, but for once for all, he wanted to pay the price. Yeah. So something that I actually missed out while I started the topic was, that why couldn't God just, forgive us? Because he's a just God.
Yeah.
Do you think, being a just God, he can't just seeing sin and just like, okay, I'll close my eyes, it's fine? No, something had to, for having an everlasting relationship with man, something had to be paid. That's why he had to sacrifice Jesus. He had to choose Jesus. So Jesus agreed to, the terms of his Father. He came to this world, he ministered, and everything was fine. But when we come from the Passover onwards, we see that, his mental struggle was very deep. Yeah. He's telling Judas, the man who I'm going to give the hand of bread is going to betray me. Judas went and went to the Pharisees, but then now he's going to pray. Now when he's going to pray, he's just taking 3 of his favorite disciples to pray. And he's telling them, what? The hour is come, watch and pray. So the disciples, you can't blame them. They are very tired after the festival and everything. They're tired. That's why Jesus is telling, the flesh is weak. Understand that the flesh is weak. But you have to stand and pray. He wants them to pray, but they sleep. But Jesus goes down and kneels in Gethsamane. That's something that really strikes my mind. I'd like you to turn your Bible to Mark chapter 14, verse 32 to... Okay, let me read that.
Yep.
34. He said to them, so Peter, James and John, they were sleeping. Okay. He began to be troubled and deeply distressed. Okay. Let's read from 32. Then they came to a place which is named Gethsemane. He said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. Okay. Then he took Peter, James and John with him. He began to be deeply troubled and deeply distressed. He's troubled. We can really feel that it's been told here that he's troubled, deeply distressed. So and every word in the Bible has a lot of meaning. What does it say in the NIV version? Can you just say that?
It also says that he began to be deeply distressed and troubled.
Okay. Then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful. What is exceeding? Means there's a measure. More, most. Yeah. You have this superlative degrees. This is way more than that. That is exceedingly is more than, I would say, the most.
Over the limit.
Exceedingly. Over the limit. Yes, that's the right word. Over the limit.
Over the limit.
What do you think about exceedingly or being overwhelmed? What does that mean? Can you just give me a definition or just your idea of the definition?
I think when I say overwhelmed, I would be like, it's something that you cannot control. It's out of your control. It's gone out of the limits. It's something more than you can tolerate, maybe. There's a level, there's a line where you have the levels of tolerance,
Yes.
but then it will go out of it. I think that's what overwhelming would be.
Yeah, you're right. So overwhelm means more than the limit. We can see, more than the limit, he couldn't just tolerate it. Okay, and he's just going to his father and telling, Abba, Father. It's not just reading, Abba, Father, take, if, all things are possible by you, take this cup of suffering. No, he's telling, Abba, Father. That is like, there's a comma after that, Abba. It just means, and after Father also there's a comma. You can just see that, he's pausing between this, Abba. Father, if it is possible, take this cup of suffering from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. It just shows, how much it's so, he just couldn't tolerate, he just couldn't, take it that much, pain. He started sweating and his sweat was
Blood.
We all sweat. So if it is so profuse, it was so intense that it had to come out as blood. Namakku chelpam we think, that everything is, it's just sweat into blood because he's God.
Yeah.
It came out as blood. No, it was so intense. That's why it came out as blood. His the feeling of overwhelmedness. We also feel overwhelmed, yeah. So that's how we can mentally how we can correlate with God. His struggle is way beyond us. It was way beyond us. That's why he came down to suffer. He just didn't come to suffer in a physical, like physically being beaten or being crucified. It was when he suffered physically, he also suffered mentally. There's so much trauma, so much deep trauma that he was going through. So he's like, so it says that, he went and prayed again and again, 3 times. If you see in verse 39, he went away and prayed and spoke the same words.
Same thing.
And when he returned, he saw them, they were sleeping. It made him kind of upset and angry, because he was upset, that in my deepest trouble, no one is there for me. No one's praying for me. I'm praying for everybody. No one's praying for me. He felt alone. And then Judas comes. He gives him a kiss. It's like, one of our friends, one of our best buddies. He's there with me wherever I go. He's there with me. Okay? He's there when I go out for shopping. He's there when I'm going out, where my bestest times, he was there. But, he comes. And then, and the unique way of him was, he gave me a hug and a kiss and tell the person I'm going to kiss is the one that you take take him away. That was the worstest,
Way of betrayal.
Betrayal. Anybody could do that, You can say, oh, avanana, take him and go. Why didn't he do that? He came and hugged him, It was so painful. Just think you are in that position. Your bestest friend comes and gives you a hug and tells, I wouldn't be able to, tolerate that. I would just be shattered at that point. He wanted to relate with all of us, being alone, being lonely, you being cheated by your friends, being betrayed by your friends. That's one thing that he also suffered. And then he's being tested in different courts. As he's being tested, he's suffering different levels of humiliation. The people around him were all the Jews, and everybody was in there. Okay, they take him to trial. They take him for a trial. Yeah, he went into 3 courts 4 times, and at every place, people are hitting him, mocking him. They slap him. Yeah, they hit him with a staff. They spit on him, and they tell things that are not appropriate to him. What did Jesus do that much? That he had to, people are so hateful towards him. He suffered hate, people's hate. So much. People hateful words. What did Jesus do for them? Nothing. But it was just the will of God that, he had to suffer. That every man had to suffer. Jesus came to take it on him. When these words go into his mind, he suffered. Even mentally, he suffered with that, people are hitting him for no reason. And then we see that Peter, his bestie, comes in there. And he comes. He disowns Jesus. He says, I don't know him. Who's that man? I don't know him.
Person, yeah.
Not only he if you see into that, he's denying. If you see in verse 14 verse 70, if you could just go through that way. 71. What he did, he began to curse and swear. I don't know this man. He's swearing, he's cursing. His best friend. Just think about, what must have been the intensity of his heart. It was, even if the whole world does, when my friend does it, it's a different level of hurt. I've taken this man every day, 3 years, he's been with me. Everywhere, even when, I'm not taking all the 12, I've taken this person with me, Peter, James and John. And Peter was one of those 3 favorite ones. And he just disowns me, That suffering that Jesus went, When everything, sometimes you feel like, we just feel like, when at least, at this point I felt like, okay, maybe, at least I'll have some emotional help. Maybe my family would have stood by me in my most difficult time. Maybe my best friend would have stood by me. That best friend disowned him. And then Pilate, he takes to Pilate. And then Pilate, people pleaser actually.
Yeah.
He wanted to please
the people. Yeah.
So he's like, though he knew that, he was innocent. That Jesus was innocent. He wanted to please the people. He wanted his place, his authority. He didn't, when his authority was challenged, he was like, nothing is more than my authority. Yeah. Some people would disown us, when their authority is challenged, or when their power is challenged. Yeah. So Pilate was one of them. He didn't want to. Then they went and so he was beaten. He was flogged. So which means, he was tied up, and then, people from both sides, they are flogging him. Now this pain is too much. The physical pain is unbearable. Okay, so he's being hit from the left and right, and then he's bleeding. Okay, he's bleeding, and his flesh is coming off, and the pain is, when he's also sweating, the sweat goes into this blood, and it kind of burns all the more. Yeah. And then people are spitting on him. Then they give him a crown. When we have small cut, or when we pierce ourselves with a needle, we feel like, ouch. But when it cut, it kind of burns, and then, it's unbearable. But these cuts were so deep on his body, he just can't move. And then, you get the crown of thorns that just goes into his face, into his head, into his eyes. If he moves either ways, anyways, this is just going to poke him. And it's so uncomfortable. It's very painful. And they mock him, telling, oh,
King of Jews.
The King of Jews. It's not like, when you made fun of, okay, you're a singer. Come on, sing. Or you are this, you are that. Where is your, like, for example, if there is someone who's working as a doctor, or you have a cancer. Okay, come on, let's see if you can help yourself. Challenging their own profession, or we have people who are being challenged, with their own abilities. Now, Jesus is also being challenged with his ability as a God. That's not an ability. That is something that's just a small word that I've used. Jesus is something beyond description. He's the Lord of Lords, King of Kings. He just came down to this earth. Now, he's being challenged for who he is. And then they again take him. Now, another funny thing is he's now brought out. And then Pilate says, okay, fine. He's bringing the worstest
Barabbas.
Worstest criminal. He's being brought out. Okay? And he's telling, okay, fine. This man is the worstest criminal. Do you think, you want him? So I can give you two options. So Pilate wants to, he's having a soft corner for Jesus. But he wants to somehow, if his ability is trying to again, try to do something. He's like, okay, fine, I'll bring you Barabbas and Jesus. Whom do you want? Now this man, if he goes out of the prison, is the worst nightmare. But they are like, release Barabbas, crucify Jesus. Jesus is like the worst criminal ever.
Being compared to him.
Is being compared to him. How would you feel, Hannah? Can you just tell me how you feel?
I would feel shattered, as in when you know that you haven't done nothing wrong and all you have done is to help people and have been compassionate to people. And at that point, when everybody has betrayed you, the people that helped you and everybody has betrayed you, and you get compared to a person that is nothing like you, the feeling is something they can never think of. It's beyond.
Sometimes we all go through that phase where, we are compared to a situation where what we don't like, we might get into phase where, people might be like, okay, you did this wrong. We might have not known about it. You may be accused of things. For things that you have not done. Yeah, Jesus has gone through that. Being accused for things that he's not done. Yeah. Now, people are like, crucify him. So much, the echo in the crowd was like, the huge crowd. Don't you think, the people who followed him was there in that crowd? Yeah.
The people that ate from him, 5,000 people.
Yeah. They might have, at least a few might have been there.
In the crowd, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think only the hateful people might have been there? No. One of them who had actually eaten from
Jesus,
the 5,000 people might have been there. There may have been a lot of people that Jesus may have healed, raised, done a lot of miracles, seen his miracles, experienced him. They have all been there. And in one accord, they are like, crucify him, crucify him. This is like, he's alone. He was lonely. So we can see in Gethsamane, he was anxious, extremely anxious, anxiety. We can see that he was depressed, He depressed from within. And then he is lonely now. Yeah? He's extremely lonely. There's nobody with him. His mother and his disciple John and few others are there. Yeah? But the whole crowd is screaming against him. And then he has a cross over him now. He's walking to Golgotha. It's, the pain, actually, I was just imagining the pain. There's this scars on his body. The bruises are so fresh.
Yeah.
And then the cross is put over it. It rubs against these bruises. And then there's a crown, the thorns. When the cross is touching that, it actually hurts him so much. If he falls, they hit him. They, throughout the journey until Golgotha, he's being insulted. And now he's on the cross. Okay? He's on the cross with, again, two thieves.
Two thieves,
Yeah. Two thieves are on his other sides, just to show, that this man is not worthy of anything. This man is not worthy of any compassion. He's just like these two.
Just as good as the thieves.
As good as thieves. And then Jesus is just giving that, on the cross, he's in the 7 sayings. I don't want to go into everything, but just a few I would like to talk about is, one is, throughout this whole incident, he's just telling, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. Because of the pain that they are doing, they've caused him, the Father who's looking from heaven can actually slay them off, or just destroy them.
Yeah.
But God is again interceding for us. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And then from there, we can see that, he's again he's asking his Father, because his Father has actually turned his face away. My Father, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me? He's asking his Father, because the sin was so much on his body. The sin, why did actually the Father turn his face, was Father hates sin. He hates sin. He just hates it. Okay? But the sin that Jesus was bearing was way too much, because he was bearing everybody's sin that we were supposed to be punished for. He's just bearing them over his body. Yeah? And the Father just turned his face away, and Jesus is asking his Father, why have you forsaken me? Now his own Father, his friends forsake him. Yeah? Everybody whom he had a talk with or had a bond with, everybody forsakes him.
Yeah.
Now his own Father who sent him here also forsakes him. He feels that, that is extreme loneliness.
Yeah.
Yeah? That is extreme loneliness. Now, Jesus' mother and John is there. He's just giving, telling John, being a good son. He's just telling,
look after
my mother. But he's again looking at the Father and telling, why have you forsaken me? But in the last he's saying, it is finished. Father, in your hands, I give my soul. It is finished. What does it finish means, It's, again, the job that you've sent me for, that is finished. Okay? Saving mankind is finished. Now, through me, through my death, it's done. Do you know how many hours actually... Can you tell me how many hours Jesus was on the cross?
Was it 3 hours? No, it was not 3 hours, was it?
Started from 9 in the morning till 3 in the evening.
Yeah.
So that was 6 hours.
6 hours
on the cross. Can you think that his 2 hands, the weight of his body was on the nails, that is on his hands and legs, feet, and the bruises on his back was rubbing against the cross, and there's this crown, and then people mocking him, and then it went to the point till not a single drop of blood was in his body. It was just water that came out of his body. So till he gave his final drop of blood, Jesus suffered. So when we think, we are alone, and we have, for our mental health and for our mental illnesses, there's no healing. No, I think, there's nobody who suffered as much as Jesus did. That was intense. Way too much. So, and what is our responsibility to that, to his suffering? What do you think we should do?
I mean, we should obviously acknowledge the fact that he did that much for us, and we should be thankful for it as well. And I think, in my opinion, what I would say is Jesus came to the world to wash away our sins. And we should not make him think that it was not worth it. When he looks back to this world, when he looks into this world, he sees sins, he sees all the sorts of sins. He sees heresies, he sees hypocrites, he sees every sort of sin he could ever see. And I feel like if I died for the world, or if I died for somebody, and that person is not grateful for what I did, I would feel that's a bit more of a pain. I would feel I did that much for that person, but that person is not giving that much care for me.
Yes.
Then so I would feel like me as a person who is accountable for all the sins that I've done, but Jesus took away from me, I should have that gratefulness. I should live away from sin and show the gratefulness that he has done for me. So Jesus should not think it was not worth it. He should think it was worth it. I did it for my children and it was worth it. So God should think I gave away my son, but it was worth it. It was all worth it. So yeah, I think that's what my responsibility is, to go away from sin and make Jesus think it was worth it.
Yes. Just like a conclusion, I would like to say, like in the olden days, it was a period of law. Laws were given, they had to follow it. When Jesus came, from Jesus' resurrection until now, it is the period of grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is just, Jesus is, it's just by grace we are walking. Even if we sin, we are like,
it's fine, God will forgive me.
We just think, okay, since he's forgiving me, can I just take it for granted? No. Now, when God punishes us, more than the people who are under the law is going to be under the people. I given my son, my only beloved, loving, my favorite son, I've given them.
Yeah.
And then they have taken for granted. They have taken a sacrifice for granted.
It's the pain of a father.
Pain of the father. We don't want that. Jesus is ready to forgive us at any point, but if we really and earnestly ask him for forgiveness, if he's ready to heal us, if we have faith in him, that, okay, through him, I'm going to be healed. That is something that he wants us to do. If we believe in him, he's going to heal us. So, this is what I wanted to share from.
I think it was such an interesting topic, and the fact that we got to learn more about how Jesus was feeling. When we really say Jesus suffered, we should think about all the aspects, like mentally, physically, betrayed by his friends. He did everything for the people around him. He had disciples who were with him for 3 years. He had his parents. He had everybody close to him. But at the end time, like when he wasn't suffering, when he was alone, there was nobody. There was not the 5,000. There was no disciples. There was not even the Father in heaven had to turn his face away from him. Imagine the amount of pain and betrayal he went through. So I think, Auntie, the topic that you gave was very interesting, and we have to think about it. And let us live as good Christians to make Jesus think that it was worth it. And let us have the responsibility to turn away from sin. And yeah, I hope it touches people's hearts. And thank you guys for watching. God bless us all.
Thank you.